gisam gewalako. Now the long refuge prayer. And when we recite a refuge prayer like this, we are holding the three jewels that we take refuge in, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, at our heart. So our hands are cupped, our thumbs are in our palms to remind us that we're holding the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So all this is mindfulness to make us aware of what it is that we're doing. So we recite this now twice in English, once in Tibet. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandals of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandals of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Jiren san sa wa dangur parje pe pal dan la ma dam pa nam la kab su chi o. Ye dam kil gorgi la sok nam la kab su chi o. Sangye chom den de nam la kab su chi o. Dam pe cho nam la kab su chi o. Pa pe ge dun nam la kab su chi o. Pa wo ka dro cho kyong song me song yes she gi chang dang dem pa nam la kab su chi o. Okay. And if you have your books and you want to make, marks, I would recommend using a pencil, and you make marks, in the books here to help you to remember where the phrasing is and so on like that. Perfectly fine to do that with any of these books. Go ahead and use them to make notes. So now taking the Bodhisattva vow, or cultivating bodhicitta, is what this title of this is. So we recite this. This is a refuge prayer. So we hold the three jewels in our hand. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shang Shu Ning Por Chi Ki Bar Sangye Nam La Kap Su Chi Chodang Shang Shu Sampa Yi So Klang De Shen Kap Su Chi Jitar Nongi De Shegi Shang Shu Tugni Ke Padang Shang Shu Sampe La Pala De Dagrim Shen Ne Patar De Shen Dro La Pandandu Shang Shu San Ni Gi Gi Shen Descendu nila pala, Rempa Shindu la Pagio. Next is the short refuge prayer. This is the most important of all the prayers. This is the prayer that we should memorize first. It's the easiest to memorize. And the first line is refuge, and then the second line is bodhicitta. So in one prayer, one short prayer, we are bringing mindfulness to both refuge in the three jewels and into attaining bodhicitta, to cultivating bodhicitta. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam la, Shangju bardu dagni kapsuchi, dagi jinsoki pe sonamgi, drola penshir sangye jupasho. Now, the four immeasurables. This is the second most important prayer. This is the four immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And these are the vast immeasurable qualities that all the enlightened beings have within themselves. We have these within ourselves too, but we don't necessarily recognize them. But through our practices, that's what we are doing, is to remove the blockages so we can recognize bodhicitta that is naturally within ourselves. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dempar jorchi. Dug now dang danal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dug now me pe dewa dang mi drawar jorchi. Nei ring chak dang ni dang drawe tang namla ne par jorchi. Okay, so those are opening prayers. Does anybody have any questions or comments about those prayers that we just did?
Lance, I just had, like, this is more of just a technical question, not a question about the content of it, but when it says like repeat 3 times, you count it based on the 2 English and the third one being the Tibetan. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, but you can do it. You can do it as many times as you want.
Okay.
So, but at least.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Michael, good to see you. I set the recording, so I'll have to send that to you later.
Thank you.
And that's a wonderful picture of you and Meadow.
I haven't seen it before, yeah.
Okay.
My daughter's birthday, she came over with my granddaughter and the day got away with me, so.
Okay. Very good, bud.
Um,
Okay.
what are these 8 auspicious symbols?
Say that again, William.
The 8 auspicious symbols,
The 8 auspicious symbols, yes.
opposite the 4 immeasurables.
I got a whole teaching about that, and that would take a whole class. So one day we'll do that. But you could look this up. You could Google this, and these symbols are said to have spontaneously appeared when the Buddha, when Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment. Is the mythology of this. Or from my experience, there's a practical application to this, and that's what I would like to relate to everybody. So I'll tell you right now what they are. If we start at the upper left-hand corner, those are called the 2 fish. And then the one below it is the parasol. And the one below that is called the conch shell. C-O-N-C-H, conch shell. And then the one below that is a padma, is a lotus flower. Then the upper right-hand corner is the Shravasti, or the eternal knot, or the endless knot. And then the one below that is the victory banner, the banner, or flag, like a flag. Then the one below that is the eight spoke chakra wheel. And then below that is the vase, V-A-S-E, the vase. So one day I would love to be able to share that with you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so tonight, what we've been talking about has been putting ourselves to recognize the antidote to samsara. You know, and last week or 2 weeks ago, we looked at the samsara. We looked at the 6 human realms, which are the psychophysical drama of being a human being, these 6 realms. And these 6 realms are the result of the karma that we produce. So we saw where we wind up, or that the suffering that we create for ourselves. Now tonight we're going to look at what it is that creates that suffering, or what it is that makes that pleasure. So it says here that this is the antidote to attachment to samsara's pleasures. So last week, it was the attachment, was also the attachment to samsara's pleasures, the suffering of samsara. This is now the method of how it is that we overcome this, or how it is that we deal with this karma, how we control this karma, because this karma is in our control. Karma is the most interesting of all these aspects of Buddhist doctrine, I think. You know, the philosophy of karma, because it is so ubiquitous to everything that we are involved in, but it's also invisible. It's like gravity. It's like electromagnetism. It's like the weak force or the strong force. These are the forces of nature that typical scientists are dealing with all the time. Gravity, dealing with electromagnetics, the weak force and the strong force, and so on. So they are invisible too, but they found ways in which to analyze it, to examine it, and to prove that it exists. Now, in spirituality, we talk about the law of karma. We talk about, it's the law of cause and effect, cause and result. And it is more nebulous to be able to draw straight lines from a cause to a result. sometimes it can be very obvious, but sometimes it's not so obvious, particularly in view of the fact that we talk about impermanence and that we've had many lifetimes, not so much as being Lance or whatever your name is, William or Bonnie or Martin or whatever, but we are part of this collective persona that we share these experiences of all beings. And then when conditions arise because of things that we resonate with, that we activate these causes to come. The causes then are like thoughts. They're the emotions. They're things that come to us that make us want to do something or to not do something. And those things that we do or don't do, that is the karma. Karma means action. The literal meaning for karma is action in Sanskrit. So it's the action we take, it's the action we don't take. And then whatever precipitates after that is the result or the effect. So when we talk about karma, we're talking about the action, we're talking about the cause of the action, and we're talking about the result of the action. So through examining this over and over and over again, we begin to recognize and see that there is this law of nature that is very difficult to deny when we look at this. And you can see it with your children, you can see it with the rest of your family, you can see it with your friends, you can see it with yourself. It's probably easier to see it with others because for ourselves, we rationalize so much of what we do. You know, we're always thinking we're doing things right, but it's easier for us to sometimes see what other people are doing and be able to be critical of them than to be critical of ourselves. But through our practices and our meditation, then we turn it around and then we start looking at ourselves. We can't do anything else but look at ourselves. And during our meditations and our contemplations and so on, what our obstructions are, what our emotions are. And then we begin to analyze and then we begin to see, oh yeah, I'm having these anxiety attacks, I'm having these confusions, I'm having these neuroses, I'm having these problems, I'm having these joyous times, I'm having these good things that I'm able to do because of things that I have done in the recent past or in the far past of our lives or in lives that I don't recognize, lives that I don't see. And sometimes these can be recognized as propensities. You know, maybe you know some family members in your family, or you know other people, or maybe you know twins or triplets, or you know, and these brothers and sisters that are born of the same parents, living in the same home, being raised in the same community environment, that they have very different propensities. Sometimes twins, one will be a musician, and the other one may be an artist of type, maybe a carpenter or something, able to do things with their hands in other ways or something like that. Maybe they're just a very ordinary person. They don't demonstrate that they have some ability like that. How does that happen? How does one person in the family have a great propensity to want to be a musician or to be an artist or maybe to be a spiritualist or to not be a spiritualist or to be a thief or to be a liar or any of these things, you know, to have these strong urges that we follow. How do these come? And why is it that someone in a family may have these unique abilities while the others don't and everything? So we can say that this is due to this law of nature of reciprocity, of karma, of having done things in the past that has now, when the conditions are right, they ripen, and now all of a sudden these these propensities rise up, and this karma comes to what we say fruition, to where we can recognize it, and we need to not suppress it. Even the difficult karma, we need to be able to allow this karma to come out so that we can deal with it. If it's bad karma, we need to deal with it. If we keep suppressing it, it's just going to keep coming up in another cycle, in another cycle, in another life, in another 10 years, in another week, whatever it is. It keeps coming up until we're able to solve that problem, to apply the antidote to that thing that's coming up. When good things come up, we need to enjoy those things. We need to share those things with others. But also, we need to beware that those good things that come can lead us into pridefulness, can lead us into greediness, can lead us into misery, and because we're not doing the things that we want to do. So we have to be aware of these things, and we have to treat these things with a balance, with the equanimity of bodhicitta. We talk about the four thoughts of, or rather the four vast qualities of bodhicitta, and one of them is equanimity, to see all things as the same, to not get too excited about having good karma, to not get too despondent about having negative karma. And we have combinations of things. It's not all that everything that we do is perfect, everything we do is happy. We have some sorrows, we have some sadness, things that keep coming up that we have difficulties with. And we need to allow them to come up, and we need to be able to apply the teachings of the Dharma to be able to be the antidote to these poisons. We talked about the 5 poisons. We talked about the 84,000 emotions. So all these dynamics, all these aspects, all these myriad things that are swirling around in our lives, all these puzzle pieces, we need to be able to recognize and fit them together in a way that we can actually transcend them. As long as it's chaotic, it keeps pulling us back. But we want to be able to order this and to be able to transcend this. So here in the outline that we have, it says, you may wonder what causes the sufferings that were just explained in the previous chapter, which was the chapter on the 6 realms of human existence, human beings, the psychophysical drama. One should know that they come from the karma or afflicted action, virtuous or non-virtuous. So virtue and non-virtue are 2 key words that are used to help us to evaluate what our actions are. They're virtuous actions, they're non-virtuous actions. So it says, what is karma? The karma of the mind and the karma of thought. So it says the karma of the mind and the karma of thought, and that being karma of body and speech. So the karma of the mind being the big mind, the mind of the heart here. So this is this is the very spiritual aspect of this, is past lives. The karma of thought is the karma of the body, physical body, and of the speech, of the intellectual mind. So this is where things of killing, of thievery, of lying, things that are much more tangible, things of the body and of the speech and so on come from. So it says here, the karma of the mind is the karma of consciousness, and the karma of thought, that which is created by the mind, action of the mind. So the classifications, it says there are 3 types of karma, afflictive and result. And so there's the non-meritorious karma and result, which is unwholesome, the meritorious karma and result, which is wholesome, and the karma and result of unshakable meditative concentration, which is the state of mind. So we can relate this in terms of our deeds. So we have wholesome deeds, we have unwholesome deeds, and then we have the state of mind that we are in. Are we in a happy state of mind? Are we in a satisfied state of mind? Are we in a balanced state of mind? Or are we in an agitated state of mind? Or are we in a slothful, lazy state of mind? So to examine karma, one of the questions that people always ask, and this is very important, you want to make a note about this because you're going to come back to this over and over again. How do we evaluate what is karma? What is complete? What are the four complete elements of karma? What constitutes karma? What constitutes a wholesome result or a non-wholesome result? So here it says that number one, you have to have a motivation to want to do something. So we talk about the cause. So the cause is this motivation, I have something to do. So here in parentheses, it's using killing as an example. So I have a motivation that I want to kill. So maybe it's killing an insect, maybe it's killing an animal, maybe it's killing a human being, whatever, but it's the point. Maybe it's telling a lie. Maybe it's, creating this story, building a house, whatever it is. We have this motivation to do something. And then there is this object that we want to do this to or for. So in the example of killing, we have something or someone that we want to kill. There's an object of the killing. So we have to have a motivation to do it. Then we have to have the object that we want to do it to or for. Then the next is we have the ability to take that action. We actually do the killing. We actually do the lying. We actually do the construction, whatever it is. We see it through. We bring it to fruition. We create that karma. We make that happen. And then we have the completion of that, which is that we have the satisfaction of doing that we enjoy doing it, that we're glad that we did it. So we can go through, we can have a motivation to kill, and we may kill. We have the object and we may do it, but as soon as we do it, we realize what a terrible thing we did. Oh my goodness, I had no idea that I was going to do such a terrible thing, that this was going to be like this. And then you have great remorse for that. And you want to undo that. But meanwhile, you did it. So you have to suffer whatever consequences there are. Now, there are degrees of those consequences. If you have the motivation, if you have the object, and you have the action, and then you have the result of that, you have the completion of that, then you have the unmistakable karma, the result of winding up in the hell realm if you kill, for instance. Let's say it's a good deed. Let's say you want to do something. Let's say that you want to write teachings for somebody, that you have the ability, you've learned some really good things, no matter what the discipline is, you have some really good things that you want to share with somebody. So you have the motivation to do it. Then you have the object. I want to do it for this community. I want to do it for these friends, for my family. I want to do it for them. And I have the ability, I have the computer skills to do it. I have the paper and pencil to write it down. I have the ability to be able to do it. And then you do it. And you create this book. You create these pamphlets. You create these pictures. You draw these pictures. You write a song. You compose music or something like that to be able to convey to people, that which you have achieved, with really good intention, with pure happiness and so on that you're trying to give them. And then you do it and you have great satisfaction that you did that, and they receive it and there is great satisfaction on their side too. So it can be anything in between. It can be this happiness, or it can be this great sadness of killing, these two extremes of things and all these things in between. So this is something to contemplate. This is something to think about. It's not something just to hear me say, one time and then it's dismissed. It's something that you have to evaluate over and over and over again. And as you develop your daily practices, you'll find that you sometimes sit down and you're just inundated with all these thoughts, all these emotional thoughts that have been going on in your head for the past, 24 hours or week or whatever, and it's coming through, and you need to be able to analyze them. You need to be able to look at them. So these thoughts are there because of karma, because of things that you did or didn't do. So therefore, we need to be able to look at, well, why did I do these things? What was my motivation? What was the object? What was I trying to do? How did I do it? And what did I think about after I did it? And so on. And then you have to accept the responsibility for it, because karma, the essence of being able to transcend karma is taking responsibility for it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we would say. So does anybody have any questions or comments about this so far?
Yeah, yes, I have a question.
Okay.
You have this here about killing. How far does that go?
Elaborate.
You mentioned mosquitoes or something, but how much further does that go?
Well, it's a good question, and a question that we need to answer. I mean, you're driving down the road on a summer evening, and you park your car, and there's all these bug splatters all over your windshield. How many of those bugs did you kill? Or you're walking out on the lawn, and you're walking the lawn and you're squashing how many animals are living in the grass and so on that you're killing and so on. Did you have a motivation to do that? Did you want to do that? Did you get in your car with the intention of killing as many bugs as you possibly could? Or walking across the lawn and so on like that. So the answer is probably you didn't have any, but at the same time, that we should be conscious that these lives are all around us and that we're taking responsibility for preserving or for killing these lives. And so we always should be in a spiritual mindfulness and reciting something like Om Mani Padme Hum, which is a mantra, and the vibration of that, it is a Sanskrit vibration, Sanskrit mantra, and that vibration you are transmitting to those animals, to those that you have killed innocently in this example. And so maybe you are giving them the ability to be reborn as a higher life form when you do something like that. So if there's a mosquito flying around in the house, now you don't know what disease that mosquito might have in there. And you know it's going to, if it bites you, it's going to sting, it's going to suck your blood, and it's going to cause, suffering for you. It may be a little thing you might think, but it could wind up being Zika or some kind of a disease or something. So you have a reflex to kill that mosquito. So Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. So you liberate that mosquito. When you sit down, if you're a meat eater and you sit down at a meal and you're about to enjoy your salad and your steak or your chicken or whatever, and you should be conscious of this animal. You should be conscious of the people that had to suffer, that had to go and harvest these foods and so on, the lettuce pickers and the tomato pickers and the people that had to truck it into you and all these things, all the suffering. So we should say a particular offering to those people at that time and to those animals who gave their life so that we could have something to eat. And to those that had to do the work to be able to provide these animals to you and these foods to you. So you should do some kind of a food offering. And in this book, there is a food offering. So it's mindfulness. It's creating spirituality in your life 24/7. More and more. You're not just spiritual when we're talking for 2 hours once a week. You're not just spiritual when you're sitting doing your meditation for an hour in the morning. You're not just spiritual when you're tuning into the teachings of other lamas or something like that. You need to be spiritual 24/7, all the time. So all these things are giving us opportunity to do that. So that's a long-winded way of saying that, you know, we take responsibility for those lives, and we Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum.
What book was that you picked up talking about the prayers for dinner prayers?
The Buddhism 101 book. Yeah. If you go to page 13, is the food offering.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's good to memorize it, it's good to recite it, and whenever you take your meal. So we can talk about that another time, but it's creating mindfulness all the time. So are there any other questions about this point of what it is that constitutes karma? It's the motivation, it's the object, it's the action that does it, and it's the completion, the enjoyment or the non-enjoyment of it. Martin, did you have something?
Yeah. So something like attempted murder, because the action didn't actually occur. How does that fall in?
Well, there's gradations of all this. If it didn't go to completion, then it's not as bad as if you did it. But if you were thinking of doing it, it has consequences too. You're creating suffering within yourself, and you're terrorizing somebody else. Let's say you showed them the gun, you showed them the knife, you're terrorizing them. That's leaving an indelible imprint for the rest of their lives. So you have to be responsible for that. And then at the same time, it's leaving an indelible imprint within your life.
Yeah.
So it's there. So it's not as bad as if you did the whole killing, but it's still bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have to look at this in terms of practicality, and we have to look at this and be able to examine this in terms of it's a natural law. To be able to see, you know, we talk about in Judeo-Christian, we talk about, and I guess in other traditions, I don't mean to exclusively say that, but we talk about the golden rule, you know, do unto others as we would have them do unto ourselves and so on. Treat our brothers as we would want our brothers to treat us, and all these different parables and so on like that. And all this comes from millions of lives being lived and seeing these results and accepting responsibility for these results. It didn't happen in a vacuum. All this didn't happen in a vacuum. It came because it was being observed over and over and over again. And you build up merit. When you do good deeds, you're building up merit. When you do bad deeds, you're building up demerits. And, you know, sometimes, you know, you've been doing good things in your life, but then there comes a time when you have a choice to do something bad, and maybe you don't carry that through, or you do carry it through, but it doesn't feel as powerful, it doesn't feel as negative to you, maybe because of the merit that you had from doing good deeds before, kind of help you through the difficulty of that non-virtue. So, but those that have great non-virtue in their lives, have great negative karma, they have a propensity to do evil things all the time. They may not recognize it as that, but they are doing things all the time. And it's very easy for them to do that. And they don't recognize the good things because, or they don't accept the good things because they don't have the merit to be able to accept that. They haven't made the spiritual connections. They haven't made the moral connections to be able to help them to pull themselves over doing these non-virtuous things. So there's many examples of that, and it doesn't take much to, watch the news or read some books or do some contemplation about this in your own life. Look at it in your own life. Look at what you were doing when you were 8 years old, when you were 5 years old, when you were a teenager, and so on. And we all made mistakes. And it's like a circle that we go through. I talk about life is like a circle. We talk about these wheels that we go around. And every 10, 11 years, depending on what philosophy you want to use, there is this cycle that we go through. So the first cycle is when we're born to the time that we're about 10 years old. And we're experiencing all these childlike things for the first time. And sometimes we don't make good decisions and we do non-virtuous things. Or sometimes we do the good virtuous things. But we go through these things. Then in our teenage years, now we're going through the cycle again, but now it's as a teenager. And sometimes some teenagers are very mindful. They're very aware. They're very thoughtful. They're very adult. They have really good awareness and responsibility for themselves because they learned those lessons when they were children, when they were 8 years old or something. They learn those lessons. Now in the teenage years, now they're more responsible. But there's just as many opportunities for the teenagers to be totally irresponsible and to be very childish and so on. Same situations come up. Maybe you've had those situations where you recognize, we call it deja vu. Say, wow, I remember this kind of situation. I've been in this place before. I've these circumstances before. The people are different. The place might be different, but there's this resonance with this that I recognize. I don't understand it, but yet I recognize it. And then 20s. Then now there's another cycle that we go through in our 20s. And so if we haven't solved these childish problems in the first turning of the wheel or the second turning of the wheel, then now in the third turning of the wheel, in our 20s do we solve those problems, or in the 30s, and then the 40s and the 50s. So you can see how we go through these 10-year cycles or so. And there are plenty of 60-year-olds who are completely childish, who completely act like just children, or teenagers, irresponsible teenagers. They have great ability, but yet they have no wisdom. They haven't learned those lessons and so on. Or on the other hand, they're very complete human beings. They're a mensch. They're very good people. They've done things for people that are very meaningful. They've helped many people. They've helped themselves and they lead a good life and so on. So we can see how this works. So we're childlike and we're teenagers and we're 20-somethings and we're experimenting, trying different things. Then by the time we get into our 30s, now we can recognize these changes. We can recognize these things coming towards us. We recognize, oh, you know what? I've done these things before and I've never been happy with the result. Maybe I need to do something a little bit different and get a better result. And we can anticipate that by the time we get into our 30s. By the time we get into our 40s and our 50s, now we become really good masters at being a human being. In most cases, we're good at our jobs, we're good at our families, we're good at raising our families, we're good at relationships, we're good at, community service. Our 40s and 50s are the years when we're our most productive and like that. And then when we get into our 60s, things begin to slow down a little bit. And we begin to see things from a wider perspective of experience of all these prior years. And now we start to become more of a teacher, to those who are going to come after us, to our children, to our grandchildren, to the people that we work with in our companies and so on, that we're leaving our jobs to and so on. We're building a legacy. So our 60s and our 70s and our 80s are much more like that. I've heard it said, I haven't gotten to the 80 part yet, but I've heard it said 80s things start to regress. I don't know, maybe they do, maybe not. What used to be, in our 20s or 30s now is our 40s and 50s. And what was in our 40s and 50s now is our 60s and 70s. So things have moved along a little bit like that. Things do evolve. There is this psychophysical drama. So we have to take a practical point of view from all of this and observe what is happening and say that, yes, there is this evolution of consciousness, and we're part of this evolution of consciousness, and we're bringing this in. And we're kind of filtering it through our spirituality system. And there are some things that we have to discard, and there are some things that we need to exalt. There are some things that we need to be able to build upon. So this is a system that is giving us the opportunity to articulate what all this is. Any questions? If you got, please speak up. Because these are, very practical thoughts. But for many of us, we take all this for granted. We haven't thought about these things. We don't put it in these kinds of terms.
Or
Yes, William.
is this we've been with the Buddhist from Vietnamese Buddhists,
Shortland.
and they're vegetarian, and I'm just went over your little food offering here, and are the people here, do they meat?
Tibetans? Yes.
Who eat meat? The Tibetans?
Yes.
Well, again, it's a practical thing. In Tibet, they can't grow very much. The most they can grow is some grass and some barley is the only thing that will grow there. In the higher parts of Tibet, it's a high desert. So they eat meat. If they didn't eat meat, that's their protein source. And they would trade for vegetables and stuff like that. That people, their livelihood would be to go down into Nepal or go down into India and bring back foodstuffs that they've traded with. And what would they trade? They would trade the animal skins. They would trade the salt that is indigenous to Tibet. And they would trade with the handicrafts that they make in Tibet and so on like that, so that they get balanced food and so on. So it's a practical thing that they eat meat. Now, people in India, they don't. They consider the cow to be the embodiment of God. Many people in Vietnam and other places like that, they do not eat meat. But I can't say for sure, but I know most Vietnamese I know, and I know quite a few, and they all eat meat and seafood. They eat more seafood than they eat meat, because they don't have the oxen, and they don't have the cows and so on like we would. But they eat chicken, fowl, things like that. So you got to look at it from a practical point of view. And we have to look at it that we are part of this chain of this, of this life, of what it is to be a human being, what it is to be an animal. A human being comes from being an animal and so on. And there is this food chain. And to be able to look at it and say, okay, that, I have given a new life, or these animals, to put it more in another perspective, these vegetables and fruits and animals have been able to sustain me in this life so that I can bring the Dharma to others. If I didn't have this healthy body, if I didn't eat right, if I didn't get my proteins and so on like that, then I would be weak in body and in mind, and I could not give spirituality. So we have to look at, the continuum that we're part of in that way and take responsibility for it, not to abuse it, and that's one of the things, do you have, a house full of freezers where every time you go to the market, you buy 20 pounds of beef and you continually freeze it and hoard it,
Sure.
Or do you buy just enough that you need to eat and that you don't leave anything wasted and throw it away? Or if there's something left on your plate, instead of just throwing it in the garbage or the disposal, that you take it outside and you share it with the animals that are out in the garden or something like that.
We know a monk who is a forest monk who lived in Sri Lanka. And the way they were taught, I understand, is like the Buddha taught, that you go out into the city with your begging bowl. And they were supposed to take whatever was given to them, whether it was meat or non-meat, and be grateful for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they say these prayers. It's like consecrating the meal, consecrating the lives of those that had to suffer to bring these foodstuffs to us.
Lance, I was just going to share with the group, because this is like a very interesting for me. I went vegetarian at 16 and became vegan when I was 26. I'm 40 right now. And I did it because of how animals are produced specifically in the United States. But having the advantage and blessing of traveled, like my family's from Iran, so I've traveled there a lot, and it's different contingencies with how foods are produced and how animals are treated. But I've had situations where people don't know that I'm vegan ahead of time, and they've made special dishes for me because I'm a guest, and they may have like lamb or meat, and I will eat the food. Even though ethically I don't agree with it, but because that person made that for me, I will still consume the food, understanding the intent and my intent and their intent for me. But it sometimes can be difficult, but I do participate in eating if that's helpful as something to share with you guys anecdotally.
Yeah, in some people's minds, it would be a sinful kind of an offense to reject someone's generosity.
How does your body react to it when you do that?
I don't have any problems eating any like meat. Like I come from a culture of heavy meat eaters, like lamb and all sorts of foods. So, and I grew up on those foods. I don't have any allergies. If I had food allergies, and it would be like, I can't eat this. If I had a definitive like wheat or like dairy intolerance, then I would say, sorry, I can't participate. But I have not had an aversive, even though I've been this long without meat and dairy products and such. I don't have like an aversive reaction, if that's what you're asking, like a physical side of it.
Yeah, the last time that I was in that situation, it was a long, long time ago. I hadn't eaten meat for many years, and was at a family gathering and felt I needed to do that out of respect for the ceremony. It was a Jewish holiday, and I got really sick afterwards. And it sat like bricks in my system. So I figured I can't do that anymore.
You think it was an emotional thing, or was it physiological?
No, it was physiological.
Okay.
Because I was okay with doing it. I'm at this family celebration, and I thought, yes, this is what I'm going to do. It's the right thing to do. And I was at peace with it.
Well, I remember when I was back in my 20s and I went vegetarian for a while, and the thing was red meat, and what energy it took to digest that red meat, and I could feel it in my body because I was really in tune with my body at that time in my life, and it was just pulling me down the way I felt about if I ate some red meat. But after a period of time, I through convenience and other things, I gave it up, and I became a meat eater. But I've learned to regulate what I eat. I eat a whole lot less meats than I used to, or than I would have as a younger person. So it's finding the balance. It's a practical solution to a moral question. On one side, and there's a practicality of physiologic, healthful reasons and everything. Many Tibetans I know who came from Tibet, went to India. From Tibet, they were meat eaters, went to India, became vegetarians, but then became anemic. And then the doctors were telling them, look, you got to start eating meat again. Your body needs that quality of protein. And then, but on the other hand, coming from Tibet, they don't have sugar. And then they come to the West, and now they're all becoming diabetics, because of all the processed sugar that we eat and so on. So it's an interesting situation. So does this make sense to be able to analyze, what it is that you need, what it is that you need to do, and what antidotes you can use to be able to maintain a mindfulness of spirituality during this process of doing things, of having causes to do things, the things that we do, and then having responsibility for the results at the end. So there has to be a sense of practicality to it. So to help us further to do that is this list of characteristics of what virtue is and what non-virtue is. So we talk about first the 10 non-virtues. So we say, so I'm looking at the outline here. So if you have that, you can follow this. So here it says, there are 3 from the body, 4 from the speech, and 3 from the mind. So the 3 non-virtues of the body are taking a life, killing, stealing, thievery, and so on. The way they express it is taking not what is given, taking what is not given, and sexual misconduct. So taking a life we've been talking about. So human life, animal life, insect life, whatever, there's a responsibility there. Stealing, taking that which is not giving, and it can be a physical thing. It can be, someone's car. It can be their money. It can be their position in life. It can be stealing their job, stealing their loved ones, coming between a husband and a wife, for instance, and becoming, the wedge that separates them so you can have the spouse that you want and so on. There's many different ways of being able to look at that. And then sexual misconduct. So traditionally, they would say, well, sexual misconduct is coming between a man and a wife. But in today's life, sexuality is kind of, means a lot of different things and so on. So the way that I think that is helpful to be able to explain it in this life is not doing anything to anybody who does not want to have it, who does not, agree to indulge in that sexual behavior, and in particular, not to children, and not to forcibly, be forcing someone into sex in any way, shape, or form. So, we could discuss that, the way it is, and the lamas, they revert back to the traditional way of saying, well, this was meant between a man and a woman, but again, we have to be practical. We have to look at the way, life has changed and so on, and not forcing ourselves onto those that do not wish to have sexual relations and so on. So there's no sexual misconduct. And we know that that sexual misconduct can leave scars that will last an entire lifetime and lifetimes to come. And the suffering that people have done, when we find more and more about people that are going through, you know, sexual problems in their 30s and 40s and 50s, we find that they were abused when they were children themselves. So there's this, you know, there's this karma, you know, there's this action that continues. There's a continuum that keeps on going. We kind of, how you say, propagate, you know, that those harmfulnesses that were done to us, we justify, and then we do them to other beings and so on. So this is how insidious these things can be. So these are 3 non-virtues of the body. Then the 4 from the speech. So the speech is the agent of the intellect. So we say speech, but that means our physical actions and so on. So we say there's lying, there's divisive speech, there's harsh words, and there's idle talk. So lying is, you know, just creating, you know, falsehoods, you know, about what we know to be true, and changing things, you know, to suit our purpose, to be able to manipulate people for any of these reasons that, you know, for killing them, for stealing, for sexual misbehavior. Lying can be a strong part of that. You know, but even if it doesn't go to those extremes, just being a braggadocio and being able to say, oh, I've done this, I've done that, and much bigger than I actually did, and so on like that. So these are all forms of lying. And then divisive speech means coming between people, you know, and being able to divide people, and being able to find ways to be able to splinter groups and so on like that. We see that in politics all the time. We see that in many other different ways in which families come together and so on. And you know, an uncle did something to your brother-in-law, you know, 50 years ago, and they're still, you know, fighting that battle. You know, the Hatfields and the McCoys, you know, the old battles, and you find out that it's these silly things that happened generations ago that continue on in families, and they hate each other and so on. And it's of course silly when you analyze it, when you find that and you say, why are we angry? Why are we doing this? But, you know, so anything that we do that creates this divisiveness between people is the result of divisive speech. So it's a non-virtue. We shouldn't do that. If we catch ourselves doing that, we should stop. Harsh words. Harsh words would be like, you disagree with somebody, and you can say to somebody, look, I respectfully don't agree with what you say. You say this, that, and the other thing, and I really can't agree with any of that. Here are my views on it. This is the way I would like to explain it to you and to the people that are listening to us and everything. And I hope, you know, we can continue the discussion, and you can reply, and we can talk about it like that. So the other side of that would be, you dumb son of a gun and all this, and start yelling and screaming and getting mad and everything. That would be harsh words, using cuss words and getting, you know, very forceful, getting in their face and so on like that. Very forceful, very harshful ways in which of having a discussion and so on is very, very hurtful. It's non-virtuous. So we catch ourselves doing it, we should just stop. Cut ourselves off from doing that. Stop. And then idle talk. Idle talk is gossip, you know, and spreading rumors. And if it's very easy to do that in families and relationships and organizations and so on, and we should not engage in that. If we're told a story about somebody and it's a distasteful story, we shouldn't go and start telling it to other people and say, well, so-and-so told me this, or I heard, or something like that. Instead, you should go back to the person that the story comes from or who is about, and say, I got to understand, is this true? Go back and find out the validity of what this is being said. Question the person that is bringing it to you, or question the person that this is about. If they're talking behind someone's back, go back to them and find out. If you're talking behind somebody's back, then go back to them and say, you know what? I'm sorry I said this, but I got to let you know that I was talking about you yesterday to some people, and this is what I said. So can you please straighten this out for me? Either tell me this is true, or tell me that I was wrong and I'll never say this again. I'll go back to those people and I'll try and correct what I misled them upon. So idle talk is something that promotes a laziness, promotes an inability to be able to dig into what the truth is about things. They would say, the lamas very often say that there's two ways in which people become, do not want to engage in spirituality. One is that in the West, they're very lazy by saying, I'm so busy. Oh, I can't read that book. Oh, I can't practice in the morning. Oh, I can't, learn to memorize those prayers because I'm so busy. So the busyness becomes a form to justify their laziness, not to want to do these things that are going to raise them up in terms of being more spiritual, being more kind people, developing, cultivating their bodhicitta. In the East, they say that people will sit around and they will drink tea and gossip all day. Is the way that they show their laziness, that they're chatter, 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 and they're busy doing that, taking breaks all the time and so on. And that's how they spend their time, rather than try and learn about their spirituality and so on like that. So this is just something that I've been told by the lamas and so on, and with the groups of people that I know from the East and the people I know from the West, it seems very true to me. So those are 3 or 4 from the speech, non-virtues. So then the 3 from the mind are covetousness. Covetousness is having a yearning for what somebody else has, having a jealousy, having an envy, to the point that it becomes something that is agitating in the background all the time, and it becomes a source of conflict. It becomes a source of anger, jealousy in people's mind. It becomes very obsessive. That we're coveting, coveting. I want their house. I want their car. I want their job. I want their spouse. All these things, come up, and it becomes insidious in the way that it preys on us, and it promotes this virtuousness within our lives, and we'll do anything to be able to get, what it is that we want, the house, the car, the lies it will tell, the murders it will do, the things that will manipulate people on and so on to get their money and so on. So first you have to have this covetousness. So if you find yourself coveting something like that, we need to chop it off. We need to stop. One of the implements that you'll find many of the deities have, the Tibetan deities have in their hands, is a knife, a hooked knife. And it's to cut off the roots of non-virtue. In the beginning, we kind of go through this pacification process. We go through this increasing our knowledge process. We go through this magnetizing to goodness process. We go through this challenging process. And we go through this, and then we're rationalizing intellectually how we do this and everything. But then finally, we get to the point that we say, you know what, when these things come up, I am just going to cut it off. I'm just going to stop that thought. And then it becomes that simple. And then you no longer do it. When you have that power to be able to do it, you don't have to rationalize it anymore. You don't have to think about all these things. You just cut it off at the root. So the next one is harmful thought. So harmful thought of the mind is when someone does something bad to you, you wish that something bad happens to them. Maybe you're not the one to do it, but that someone else does it. And maybe you set forth, telling stories or something like that, creating devices of speech that will foment in this harmful thought coming to fruition. But even if it doesn't come to fruition, just having that harmful thought, oh, she cheated on me in my relationship and it hurt me so bad, and I hope that you have this relationship and you fall madly in love with this person and they cheat on you and your heart breaks and you go and kill yourself. Something like that. Having harmful thoughts for somebody. You stole this money from me and I'm going to, and I hope that somebody steals the money from you. I hope that you bought this house with the money you manipulated from me. You got these cars. May you die in the car. May you careen off the highway and land in a fiery ball. Having those kinds of thoughts as a result of something negative happening to you. So again, we have to cut those thoughts off. When we see ourselves doing that, we have to cut ourselves off from that. We got to stop ourselves. And then wrong view. Now, wrong view of the mind is not understanding, not respecting the law of karma, not understanding the law of reciprocity, not recognizing that if you do good things will come to you. If you do bad things will come to you. Of not appreciating that, of not recognizing that. Whether it's on a personal level or it's on a very grand level, and it's on a national kind of a level, on an international kind of a level or something like that. And taking responsibility for that and seeing that we are part of a community, we're part of a society, and is our inability to speak up and to be able to let ourselves be counted in on one side or another, or if there's many sides, to be able to make declarations of what it is that we recognize to be the truth, what we recognize to be honesty, and so on. So, and maybe it's not just with karma, but it's with other things, to have the wrong views of being a barbarian, that we can justify going and killing people, or that we can justify stealing from people, or that we can justify treaties with people, and to be able to extract things from their lands and so on. And then when the land seems to be completely exhausted, then we'll give it to them. But then later on, if we find that those people have some wealth on that land, then to go back and rescind on that and say, oh, that treaty was wrong. We're taking that land back because now we find that there's some things there that are very useful to us. We want that land back and so on. So we take advantage of people. So all these wrong views that we can do these things, which come from the basis of not appreciating karma, of being able to recognize the causes of karma, the actions of karma, and the results of karma. Any comments or questions about that? Okay. So then comes the non-virtues. So the non-virtues, of course, are the other side of the virtues. So here it says the 10 virtues are human nature on the way to Buddha nature. So the 10 non-virtues, we can say are human, as part of our human nature, to do these things, to kill, to steal, to do all the things that we've been talking about. But it's our true nature, our Buddha nature, that wants to do good deeds, that wants to do virtuous deeds. So instead of killing, we protect the lives of others. Instead of stealing, we practice great generosity. We give to others. Instead of sexual misconduct, we maintain moral ethics in terms of sexuality. And then in lying, instead of lying, we speak the truth. We always speak the truth. And if we don't know, instead of lying and making a story about what it is we don't know, we say, I don't know. That's speaking the truth. I don't know. I'll try and find out, and I'll do what I need to do the research to find out for you, or maybe you can find out for yourself, but I'm not going to create this lie for what might be my own aggrandizement to be the wise one. And then divisive speech, the non-virtue of divisive speech, is overcome through harmonizing those who are unfriendly. So if there is someone, if we're in a group of people and someone is speaking up and trying to split the group, to try and harmonize with them, to try and find the commonality, between people, whether it's political, there used to be a time, we all probably can remember, that if you ever watched C-SPAN or something like that, and there was differences of opinion between, this political party and that political party, but still they coexisted and they found ways to work together and they had mutual respect for each other. They would eat lunch together. They would go on vacations together. They would do things together and so on. They would find a way to do things and everything. But today we know that it's completely split apart. There's no harmonizing. There's no finding common ground. How are we ever going to get back to it? Do we want to get back to it? Do we find that to be virtues? Do we find that this non-virtue of splitting people is virtue? Are we that twisted to think that that's wrong, that that's correct, that that's the correct way to live? So these are all things to consider. So harmonizing those who are unfriendly. Then harsh words, speaking peacefully and politely. So I said, instead of using cuss words and yelling at people, we find ways to be able to talk nicely to them. Instead of idle talk, gossiping, that we speak meaningfully. In other words, that we know what the truth is, we only speak the truth, and if we say something that's wrong, we go back to somebody and we say, I said this about you, please tell me, was I correct or am I wrong? And I'll never say these things again, or maybe can I help you change if these things are correct that I said, this rumor is correct, can I help you to change your ways? And then with covetousness, instead of being coveting others, that we practice unattachment, that we say, I don't need that big house. I don't need that car. I don't need those clothes. I don't need that job. I don't need to have that spouse. I practice unattachment to those things that I am developing these strong yearnings, this coveting for. And then harmful thought, now we practice loving kindness. Harmful thought is, the root of hatred. Or hatred is the root of harmful thought, however you want to look at it, the same, one equals the other. And so by practicing loving kindness and showing wisdom, do we overcome hatred? By showing wisdom, by exercising wisdom, by learning wisdom, do we overcome hatefulness? So we practice that loving kindness. And then wrong views, we overcome that by engaging in the perfect meaning. So the perfect meaning here would be, peace, would be bodhicitta, would be understanding karma, understanding doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, taking responsibility, living peacefully, engaging in the perfect meaning. So all this bears examination. All this bears contemplation, thinking about these things. So you should write these down. Maybe you can make yourself a little card and memorize these things. 3 of the body, 4 of the speech, 3 of the mind. These are things that we take for granted. These are things that we've taught to our children at one time or another, but maybe we didn't have it in a cohesive way, a system and way of being able to explain it and so on, and to be able to explain it to ourselves, to be able to abide by this, so that we now have a code by which we can live our life. We can change our life. If you remember back in our very first session, and we talked about the 4 Noble Truths, and we talked about the 8-fold path. And we said that by examining our life and using the 8-fold path and having these right views and so on in the 8-fold path means understanding these virtues and these non-virtues. This is how we put ourselves with the right view, with the right speech, with the right protection, with the right resolve, with the right conduct and so on, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right wisdom. All this comes from these virtues. So now we come to the karma and the result of unshakable meditative concentration, the state of mind. By practicing the cause, meditative concentration of equipoise, loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, which is bodhicitta, one will obtain the results born of meditative concentration. So we have to actively engage in this in our meditation. And in the stages of meditation, in the book, Stages of Meditation, if you were with us when we were talking about that we go through the 4 thoughts to turn the mind to the Dharma. That's the first step of developing our meditation practice. So that's what we're doing right now. And then we start talking about loving kindness. And we start meditating on loving kindness. And we start meditating on compassion. And we start meditating on bodhicitta, each step by step. And then we start developing calm abiding meditation, shamatha meditation. Then we develop insight meditation or vipassana meditation. And then we go into deity yoga. Then we start seeing ourselves as the deity, as the true nature, as the Buddha. And we go through the generation stage, the visualization stage, and then the completion stage where we become the Buddha. So all this is all part of this system. And what we're talking about now is the basis of the meditative concentration. If we don't take the time to do it, it doesn't come. Any questions or comments? Hi, Tom. So I know we haven't stood up and taken a break. Does anybody need to take a stretch break or anything? Okay, and we can continue for the next 30 minutes. Okay, so now the next part of karma, to understand karma, is this point of what we call ascriptions. The ascription of karma means that you experience the results of the karma you create. Results will ripen in the skandhas related to the actor and not to the others. So what this means is that you can't give karma to somebody else. You can't give your karma to somebody else. Now, they can follow your deeds and they can take on their own personal karma, but you can't give it away. You can't absorb someone else's good karma. You can't absorb somebody else's negative karma. You can follow the example of what that karma represents, and you can become the embodiment of that yourself, but it's not something that you can ascribe to something else. It is your karma. So we look at this through the 5 skandhas. So the 5 skandhas are the aggregates to attachment. This is the truth of suffering. So when we talk about the 4 Noble Truths, and we talk about we have this body, we have this life, we grasp this body, we cling to this body. So here in these 5 skandhas, what does this body mean? So it means, number one, it means the form that we have. It means the sensations that we feel, the feelings and so on that we have. The perceptions that we have, that we can think, that we're, this consciousness, that we can perceive ideas and so on. We have these mental formations of what it is, these concepts, that we can develop these concepts within ourselves, within our lives, and that we have this consciousness level of being able to process what the 5 senses or the 5 senses bring together within our 6th sense, the mind consciousness, and the way in which we then create the persona in which we live and so on, our ego and so on, and the consciousness of the impacts that makes in the rest of our lives and the rest of phenomenal nature and so on. How that all the dynamics of how all that works with other people, with the rest of nature and so on. So this consciousness. So these 5 skandhas are what constitute what we call the self. But we recognize that all these things are independent, or rather are dependent on other things. That to have these things, we need to have these other things happening. So we'll talk about that some more when we talk about emptiness and how things all are compounded of each other, that we are all aggregates of things. So these 5 skandhas are the 5 basic building blocks of the self, of what we call the self, which is empty of its own true nature, which is nothing but compounded nature. So we say craving or desire attaches to the skandhas, appearing as heaps, personality, characteristics or groups, birth, old age, death, duration, and change. So all these things are the way in which the myriad ways in which we carry out our lives, the vicissitudes that we go through during our lives and so on, these cravings and desires. So all this, so we can't ascribe that to somebody. We can't give that to somebody else. We may think that we're doing that. We may project this, and we may think that we are doing this. But the reality is that it is our karma. It is ourselves that is impacted by all this. We can't do that to somebody else. They have to take it on for themselves and do it themselves. That's why the Buddha said, look, I can't give you enlightenment. All I can do is teach you how I got enlightenment. It's up to you to want to follow this example. So in the same way, that's what we're trying to do. We can't transfer consciousness. We can't transfer karma. We have to develop our own karma. So then there is this strict result. It says here, one will experience happiness and suffering without mistake through the results of virtuous or non-virtuous karma. One will experience happiness through accumulation of karma. By accumulating non-virtue, one will experience the result of suffering. So let's break this down again. One will experience happiness and suffering without mistake through the results of virtuous or non-virtuous karma. So in other words, if we do good deeds, good things are going to happen to us. If we do bad things are going to happen to us. We can do good things in some arenas, in some areas of our life, but still non-virtuous things can still be happening to us. Likewise, we can be doing bad deeds all the time, be recognized as a bad person, but still there are some good things that can happen to us. And we need to be able to recognize those and use those things to help us to overcome those negative things. One will experience happiness through accumulating virtue. So the more virtue that we do, the more we accumulate that virtue, the more that we accumulate the merit for that. And that merit sometimes can carry us through the day. It's like money in the bank. When a rainy day comes and we need to have that extra money, we go to the bank, we can get it out, and we overcome whatever difficulty we're going through. Sometimes through we're having non-virtue, we're having a challenge, but if we go and we go to the bank of virtue and we say, how did I accomplish this virtue? How did I accumulate this? If I use those techniques to be able to overcome this non-virtue, then I can create this wholesomeness, which is my goal as the result. So the system, again, is teaching us how we can use these different aspects of the system to help other aspects. And then it says, by accumulating non-virtue, one will experience the result of suffering. So if you're going through suffering, if you're going through anxiety, if you're going through misery of any type or another, it's because of the things that we have done. Many people will say, well, why am I getting sick? Why am I having this neurosis? Why am I these bad things happening to me? Well, we have to stop, we have to think and examine what it is that we have done in our lives, what it is that we are doing, and maybe the things that we have brought from other lives with us that come to fruition in this life. And we need to be able to reverse those. We need to be able to neutralize those. So not by suppressing them. That doesn't do it. It only pushes it off to another time of that 10-year cycle that I was talking about. That only suppresses it. But we need to allow it to come up. We need to recognize it. We need to examine what are the component parts of that emotion, what is creating that, and then we need to apply the antidotes. We need to neutralize those poisons through the antidotes. And then what comes is the wisdom, the 5 wisdoms. If you remember the 5 wisdoms, we talked about the 5 poisons, we talked about the 5 antidotes, and we talked about the 5 wisdoms. So the 5 wisdoms are our true nature. This is our natural state. Our natural state is to be happy. Our natural state is to be peace of mind. Our natural state is to be bodhicitta. It is the opposite. It is our manipulation. It is our ego that is creating all these lies and these delusions that we create for ourselves to give us more of a meaning, a temporary meaning in this life for ourselves, that we live in this confusion. So we need to find that peace. We need to find what the components are of this peace. So we are the architects of our lives. We are the engineers of that architecture. And if we find that we have, created a bad segment in our architecture, we need to re-engineer it. We need to redesign it. We need to redo it. And we do it through the analysis of the system and by engaging the system to how to recreate that. This is our process. And we do this by being able to step back, by being able to withdraw, to be able to take an hour a day or a half an hour a day or whatever it is, to be able to peacefully contemplate and recognize what it is that we're doing, what it is that is bothering us, recognizing what it is that is our happiness, and be able to use that time to be able to say, oh, okay, I need to change some things. Here's how I'm going to do it. And we use the system to help us to guide through that. So we increase from the small. This is point 5. It says maturation of a big result from a small karma. For example, regarding non-virtuous deeds, it is said that one will experience a kalpa in the hell realm for each instant of negative thought. So a kalpa is a very long time period. It's saying, you know, that if you do a bad thing, no matter how many good things you did, you do a bad thing, it can upset the whole rest of your life. An example of that would be a murder or a life or a sexual deviation that you forced on somebody or something like that, or a big lie, any of these non-virtues. Or on the other hand, any of these good things that you've done can be a strong influence on the rest of your life. A little thing can become a very big thing. So from little things come these big changes. And we need to do things a little bit at a time. And we create stability. It's a building block, building block, building block. More and more and more, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, either on the negative side or on the positive side. So this is the increase from the small. The next comes the inevitability. Means that unless the antidote to a karma appears, the result will come without waste or loss, even though limitless kalpas have passed. Karma may lie dormant for a long time, but somehow, when it meets with the proper conditions, the result will come out. Thus, one becomes afraid of the suffering of samsara and gains confidence in karma and result. Inevitability. So what this means is that things can happen when we were, say, a child, and we don't know about it. You know, we don't remember it. It's been suppressed. But then when we're 30, 40, 50 years old, it comes up. It's amazing to me in my life, the examples of things that have happened that I've repressed for 20 or 30 years, that through meditation, all of a sudden, here comes that experience again. It's my own therapy, you know, and it comes up and I say, whoa, you know, and boy, do I have to fix that. You know, I have to understand what caused it. I have to understand the remorse. I have to understand the antidote, you know, to not do this again. And if I can make amends for it in some way, it may not be to that person that the suffering was created, or maybe it was my own suffering, but to be able to do it to all beings, to then become the living example of that restitution. You know, so maybe it's something from a past life, you know, that we don't recognize. You know, those propensities that we have. You know, why do I always, in this situation, why do I always get mad? Why do I always turn on people? Why does this always happen like that? You know, and it's very deep sometimes. And sometimes you can't do it by yourself. It's too deep. Sometimes you need some help. Sometimes you need, you know, to talk to a brother or a sister, a Dharma brother and sister. Sometimes you need to talk to your Lama, your teacher. Sometimes you may need to seek out a therapist, somebody that's really deep, that's very profound, and you need that kind of help. Sometimes there's a medicine there. Sometimes it's just simply the Dharma. Just by practicing the Dharma. And sometimes you say, you know what? It doesn't matter how I got here. It doesn't matter why I do this. Do I have the power now to cut through it, to stop doing this? And I'm not going to be fearful anymore. I'm not going to be hateful anymore. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to stop lying. I'm going to stop doing these negative things and so on. Maybe it's as simple as that. So it's there for us to do the easy thing first, to take the time to develop our daily practice and how much we can be our own physician. The medicine Buddha teaches us that we are the medicine Buddha. All the deities teach us that all this loving kindness, all this compassion, all this joy, all this equanimity is ours, is within ourselves. We have the ability to be the deity. We have the ability to be the Buddha. We have the ability to be the transcendent one. So whether we can do it by ourselves or whether we take on the help to do it, we should do that. But work at it, work at it, work at it. And whatever we don't do in this life, whatever we don't do today or tomorrow, we've got next week, we've got next month, we've got next year, we've got next life. And to look at it that way, to give ourselves a viewpoint of the continuum, and to allow ourselves to be part of that continuum. So it says, unless the antidote to a karma appears, the result will come without waste or loss, even though limitless kalpas have passed. So in other words, if that karma has been created, it will not diminish or it will not increase. If you take a seed for a particular kind of a tree or something like that, you put it in the ground and generations may go by and that seed remains there. But then when the right water conditions come, when the right heat conditions come, when the right nutrition conditions come, that seed will sprout and that tree will begin to grow. It may have been generations and generations before, but karma is like that. So we may not see it. It's invisible to us. But we have to recognize when it comes and allow it to come to fruition, not to suppress it.
So no expiration on that?
There's
On
no
karma?
expiration. There's no expiration. We don't beat it. So when it meets the proper conditions, the result will come out. Thus one becomes afraid of the suffering of samsara and gains confidence in karma and suffering. So we should have a respect of the nature of samsara. Samsara, defined in Sanskrit, is the ocean of suffering. This is the ocean of suffering. This is what we live in. We can become transcendent. We can learn to be able to get out of this ocean of suffering. But as long as we're breathing, as long as we're a human being, we have that propensity to be pulled back down. And we have to be ever vigilant through the Four Noble Truths, through the Eightfold Path, through all these systems that we're talking about, to be able to purify our lives and stabilize that purity and maintain that, so that when we pass from this life, when we give up this body and we become this pure spirit that is locked up within ourselves, and we release that spirit is already untethered, will not be pulled back. And if it is pulled back, we're in control of where it's going to go. We know, okay, I'm not perfect. I know I'm going to have another life. And it's not going to be the same life as the one I've got now. My name is not going to be the same. I may not be the same sex. I may not be in the same country. I may not be a human being. I may be something else. But whatever it is, I'm guiding myself towards that, and I have to take responsibility for that. So we have to respect samsara. And if it means having a fearfulness that we can be pulled back into non-virtue, then that is an awareness that would be motivation for us to be able to exalt ourselves to virtue. Our fearfulness of being pulled back into the hell realm, of being pulled back into the hungry ghost realm, or the animal realm, or any of the higher realms, the God realm, or the demigod realm, or the human realm itself. So we gain confidence in karma and result by doing this, by practicing this. If I'm always doing good deeds, if I'm neutralizing negativity, if I'm not allowing myself to become arrogant in the process, then I become pure spirit. Spirit has no arrogance. So we say, and this comes from the glimpse after glimpse. Karma creates like an artist, and karma composes like a dancer. What that means is karma, our life is like a blank sheet of paper when we start out. And every day is like another blank sheet of paper. What are we going to do with this day? What are we going to do with this life? What are we going to do with the rest of this year? What are we going to do with the rest of my life? Whatever. How, like an artist, how am I going to draw that? How am I going to paint that illustration, that artist like that? How am I going to compose my song, my music? How am I going to do that? What is going to be the theme that is going to run through this day, going to run through the rest of my life? How am I going to compose this? If I'm a dancer, how am I going to dance the dance? A dance can be a very prescribed way of doing things. Every movement has a meaning. Every movement is completely in balance. Every movement is completely described and can be taught to others and so on. But what happens when you lose balance? What happens when you move in a direction that you shouldn't have moved, and now you falter, and now your foot goes somewhere else, your leg goes somewhere else, your body balance shifts somewhere else? What has happened? You've created a new dance. And to incorporate that mistake into your life in a way that is positive, that is brilliant, that is beautiful, that becomes now a creation, like the painter does the creation, like the composer does a new song, the dancer does a new dance. So we have to, the greatest perfection is the awareness of our imperfection and how we work with that. This is the contributory cause that we talked about in chapter 2. This is what, the working basis. This is what we have to work with, our life as a human being. The contributory cause is our teacher. And sometimes we need the teacher. We need someone to give us that perspective, that out-of-body experience that we can relate to. Sometimes we can't see it ourselves. We need to invite the teacher to help us. And sometimes it's very painful. But we need to accept that, and we need to incorporate that into the rest of our lives with meaning, with love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So these are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. This is what we've been talking about these past chapters 3, 4, and 5, and 6. So this precious human life, impermanence, the suffering of samsara, and karma, cause and effect. So our first prayer that we should, or maybe not the very first prayer, but one of the things that we should do in our daily practice is our refuge practice, our refuge prayer, our bodhicitta prayer, and the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. Whether we are an ordinary being like ourselves, whether we are a Lama, or whether we're the Dalai Lama, in the Buddhist scheme of things, this is what we do. And I'm sure in other traditions, whether it's Hinduism or it's Judaism or it's Christian or it's whatever other Muslim, Islam, whatever, there is some variation of this same prayer, of these same things. Some iteration is in their books, is in their practices. And the devout, the holy men, holy women, they practice these things. So here it is for us. Thank you very much. Please, if you have any questions or comments, speak right up. Does this make sense?
Yeah. So you said, you and Tom said there's no escaping karma.
Right.
And I guess that has to tie into rebirth, because if somebody creates bad karma and suddenly dies, you know, an accident, then you would escape it.
You're escaping it physically and intellectually, but spiritually it stays with you.
But after you die, that's it.
Well, our point of view is that we don't die. Dying is relative. Dying is temporary. Dying is just what we see in samsara. But it's the question of whether we're born back into samsara or are we liberated into what we would say is reality, the reality of true nature, the reality of peace.
So let's say like there's a baby that is born with a painful birth defect.
Right.
Would it be the view that it could be karma?
Yes. Yes. And there's collective karma. When an airplane falls out of the sky for whatever reason, and 200 people are on board, there's a collective karma of all those people to die in that fashion. You know, but that's to look at it from the point of view of death, of dying like that, you know. But there also can be great many people that are doing wonderful things and sustaining life and sustaining a spiritual value in life. And people are doing that too. And they're having maybe a more of a natural death or a death that they're in control of. It's a heavy thought. It's a very, that's why I say karma is the most difficult of all the doctrinal precepts or teachings of Buddhism. You know, and it requires, you know, many meditations on it, and to be able to accept it, take responsibility for it, know how to work with it. So for some of us it comes very easy. Some people have very struggle with it for a long time.
Do the Tibetans have a caste system?
Not like they did in the Hindu, no. You know, they had a social, political, you know, hierarchy. And even in the monasteries, they have a hierarchy. And it's gone through many reformations. You know, even today, look at what's happened in Tibet now. You know, in many ways, Tibet has been freed from itself, from its old ways, and has gone out into the world. And what's Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, going to be like in 500 years from now?
Right. Lance, Martin, that was a really interesting question. I appreciate you asking that. I was thinking something along those lines. I appreciate when other people ask questions that I may be thinking. Lance, I have two questions. One, when you are like talking to people who are like new and are learning all of this, do you have people who get overzealous and are like, I'm going to go get virtue points and start doing all these things and maybe fundamentally misunderstand, like you don't need to go start volunteering and doing all these like tangible, measurable things that actually may, like the intention may be, oh, you're getting all this social attention and people start praising you. And then it becomes, there's another function that maps on. But have you seen that happen? And do you have feedback for that or thoughts you would share on when you're shifting and being more aware of, like you talked about, your daily life, spirituality and the good things every single moment, there's an opportunity?
Absolutely. And that's, all that happens. And you know, the strongest Zionists are the youngest ones, you know, the ones who are new to the beginners and so on. And they'll go out and do all these things, you know, for the sake of the the people, the religion, or whatever like that and everything. The older ones who have been in it for a long time, they're like, well, we don't need to do all that. So yes, there is this assimilation process, and it takes years, it takes lifetimes. We could say that we've had countless lifetimes to get to where we are right now, and that we have many lifetimes ahead of us to be able to refine and to be able to incorporate and to be able to perfect what it is, these building blocks that we're learning now, to be able to do it. To be able to do it in a single lifetime is possible, but it's very, very, very rare to be able to do that. So we accept that and say, okay, I'm preparing myself for my next lifetime. So yes, the ability to be able to have Sangha, that's what Sangha is, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Sangha is the body of the Buddha, is the community of the Buddha, the people, the brothers and sisters, and so on, that help us to work with this, to shape all this, to develop this, and so on, in a wholesome atmosphere. We're not saying you come here for 2 hours and you listen to all this, and then you go downtown and you go back to your gang members and you start doing all the stuff that you do with your gang members. We're not saying that. We're saying, no, you want to do this and make this your family now. Make this your people. These are your brothers and sisters. And then we start helping each other, how everybody affects each other. My wife, for example, she is not a practitioner. She does not like to read. She has difficulty reading, concentrating, and so on. What she learns from is when the brothers and sisters come here and we have meetings, when the lamas come here and spend a few days with us and everything, that's when she has her breakthroughs. When she really sees the practicality of this being there, living it, not just talking about it, but actually living it. That's when it really matters. That's when it really makes a difference.
Liz, I have one more question. This is and this may be too deep, too much of a deep dive, but I don't know if anyone else has had something traumatic happen, like a really bad car accident, or something like a severe medical issue where you weren't sure what the outcome was going to be. For me personally, I had blood cancer. I was born with blood cancer, and I was able to get treatment with modern medicine that saved my life. And I've at moments in my life gone back because I can remember the pain and being in hospitals and that sort of stuff. I imagine it was more painful for my parents because that's your child. But I'm wondering, now we have all the advances in technology that are saving us, and I'm wondering, some of us may be meant to die. We should have died, and from our karma, but science saves us. And has that ever come up in conversation, where modern medicine and advances save people who maybe should have died as part of their karmic cycle much sooner?
Have you ever heard, there's nothing new under the sun?
Mm-hmm.
So what we are experiencing as being new,
Mm-hmm.
is been here the whole time. It's just being recognized.
Okay.
Maybe we're recognizing it as individuals, maybe as at a national level or as a humankind level. But we see things in 3 dimensions. But can you deny that there's not a 4th dimension or a 5th dimension or a 6th dimension or a 7th dimension? Maybe 16 dimensions. So it's part of the arrogance of a human being to think that they know everything and can know everything.
Okay. I'm gonna let that sit. I'm gonna think about that response.
Okay.
I'm gonna think about that. I'm gonna digest that.
Okay.
Profound for me.
Okay. Good. And the more we do the deep dive into the Dharma, then we find, things to support that argument.
Thank you.
You know,
When we do the Bodhisattva vows, the vows are to stay until the last sentient being is liberated.
are you talking about the vow on page 4? That's the page 4 is taking the Bodhisattva vow. So if you've got this book, if you've got the Deity Yoga book, I think it's on page maybe 6 or something like that. Taking the Bodhisattva vow or cultivating bodhicitta. So
Right. More.
it's So it says the first line. It says, "Until I attain the heart of enlightenment."
Right, until when I am enlightened even, it says bodhicitta, where is it at?
I give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Is that what you're thinking?
Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to it and apply myself to accomplish stages of the path.
So what this is saying, that when I achieve Buddhahood, I no longer need this prayer. But until that time, I'm going to recite this prayer. I'm going to keep this prayer close to my heart and my mind. Because this prayer is leading me in that direction to become a Buddha. And a Buddha, remember, a Buddha is just a word that we're using to symbolize this true nature of peace that we have within ourselves, this true nature of love that we have in ourselves. And I'm using the word nature, this true nature. What is nature?
Then you go to the short refuge prayer.
It says it again. I take refuge until enlightenment is reached.
Right. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the way in which we approach Buddhahood is through the path of being a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a wholly enlightened being. That's the translation of bodhisattva, a wholly enlightened being. So being on that path is what leads us, is what the result becomes Buddha. That's what we call Buddha.
Somewhere, and I don't know exactly where, the Bodhisattva the Bodhisattva were when they attained enlightenment, they stayed with the earth until all of the people were enlightened.
Right. That's the 8 great bodhisattvas, and those gazillions of bodhisattvas have chosen to postpone their final enlightenment, their perfect enlightenment, to become a Buddha in order to help sentient beings.
Right. So as I'm saying this Bodhisattva prayer, then what I'm asking for is to stay around many lifetimes until everybody has attained enlightenment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to allow you to progress along the path, so that when you have the opportunity for perfect enlightenment, you're able to do it. That's called the overcoming the obscuration of wisdom. So what we're working on now, as we're going through these steps of, we're not even there yet, but we're trying to get to the point of entering the path of becoming a bodhisattva. But the bodhisattva then is going through all these purifications of the emotions. There's 84,000 emotions. Now they're not all listed, but it's purifying hatred, it's purifying jealousy, it's purifying delusion. And so when it's going through that and getting down to the finer points of that, and liberating from it. So the deity yoga is what helps us to do that. All these different things that we're just learning about. We're getting the bare essentials of the terminology of what this is to be able to then, move into the next level of being able to practice things. Okay. Can you see, let me ask you this question. Can you see that we're talking about a path? Can you appreciate that there's a pathway that we're trying to define here?
Well, I can see the path, and I can see that I not only can see the path, but I can see where the bodhicitta, attaining a starting out with the bodhicitta and getting your bodhicitta going is very helpful with working in the household or wherever you are.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it seems like every time I turn around, I got some kind of a new lesson I'm learning.
That's life.
Yeah, and I remember being 40 and thinking to myself, oh, I got it made now. I know what to expect. I got my career, everything's going good. I got it sussed out. I don't need to read another book. I don't need to study anything more. I got it sussed out. But then, shortly thereafter, I realized what a fool I was. All right. Well,
Hey, Lance.
somebody's, yes.
On that note, I remember you telling me about a year ago, almost, that Dharma, the word Dharma in Tibetan means change.
Mm-hmm.
You said, we're not trying to change the world. You're trying to change yourself. And by doing so, you can change the world.
One thing at a time, yes.
Exactly. So,
Yeah. And if you remember last
locally.
week, I'm sorry, Martin, what did you say?
It's the environmental thing. You think globally, act locally.
Yes. And last week, I want to bring the point you just made about change. When we were talking about the 6 realms last week, or 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the human realm, and we were talking about the Buddha who was there and was holding the bowl of Dharma elixir, the bowl of Dharma teachings. And what that represented was that it's the human being who can change. The God can't change on his own. The demigod can't change on his own. The animal can't change on his own. The hungry ghost can't change on his own. The hell being can't change on his own. The human being can change on his own, but how much easier it is when you got a good teacher. And who's the teacher that was holding the bowl? Was Buddha Shakyamuni. And that just represents our true nature. We see ourselves, we begin to experience ourselves as the Buddha. We start recognizing that wisdom within ourselves. It starts coming up naturally through our practice, through our activities that result from the practices, from the meditation. We begin to see the changes. We become more resilient. We don't break under pressure. We have more love. We have more compassion. We have more joy. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we should do our dedication now for the benefit of the enlightenment of all beings. So if you've got your book here, do you have this book? Okay, good. All right, so then let's go to page 21, the dedication prayer by Lord Jigden Sumgun, because this is an excellent, brings it all together. No matter who we are, we can recognize ourselves in this prayer. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, and instructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha and all the enlightened ones. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Hey, Lance, I'll be traveling next week, so I will not be, probably won't be joining. I might be able to come in late. We'll see what time I get back.
All right, well, that's fine. And you know that we are recording these, and these are all available on YouTube.
Yeah, so I will watch it after the fact and be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and any of the other teachings that we talked about, if you haven't been taking notes and you want to go back and refresh your memory on these things, go right ahead. You're welcome to do that. And remember that these teachings are coming from the book called The Jewel Ornamental Liberation. So, you know, if you feel that you want to get that book, it would be a book of a lifetime.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night.
Safe travels.
Safe travels.
Yeah, safe travels. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Lance.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you very much. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Bonnie and William and Michael. Thank you. All right. Jerry, bye-bye. How are things for you today, Tom?
Great.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, how about you?
Good. I was
Yeah?
really tired when I got home. I came home and took a nap and I felt better, but I didn't sleep great last night, but I persevered.
Man, it was pouring last night.
Yeah, we heard it. Yeah,
Man, lightning, thunder, and then this morning too.
yeah,
That was a lot of rain,
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, man.
All right.
It was
So what's up
great
for
to-
tomorrow? You gonna go into see Kempo tomorrow?
Yeah, Sunday morning.
All right,
So
good.
what time are you gonna do your the sadhana practice tomorrow?
Oh, I forgot all about it, and the answer would be no anyway, because Kempo's doing it, and I'll be honest and say I didn't really recognize that he was doing, the daily prayers and everything.
Mhm.
So if people want to tune into that, they should tune into him doing it.
Mm.
So he does it at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yeah, he did meditation for about half an hour, and then he'll do that.
And then he
Yeah.
did the Buddha Shakyamuni and so on.
Sakamani, he'll do Achichoki, and then he'll do
White
uh,
Mambala.
Bala, and then he'll do oh man, what's the last one he does? Then he'll do the Tara, the seven Tara, the
The
Tara.
recitation. The recitation.
Recitation, yeah.
Did you get the new translation that he sent out?
Yeah, you know why? No, Amanda sent that out, right?
Yeah.
You know why Amanda just sent that out, right? Well, this morning, when we were doing the practice, Kempo asked me to say the Tara, and I told him I don't have the new one. I just have the original one that's in our Deity Yoga Sadhana. So Amanda was there, so I guess she heard me. So, and I did the original one in the sadhana. So, and then after practice, she had sent that out, and I said thanks, So I downloaded it. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, I got it. And I saved it, and I'll print it, for myself, and I'll change it in the book. The next edition of the book will have the change in there.
Yeah, that's it's a lot longer than the original one that's in there right now.
Is it?
Oh yeah, it's a lot longer. Yeah, it's pretty extensive. But I mean, even the original one, it's got the meanings are one's just the new one just stretches everything out a little bit more. The old one just is really concise. It's bop 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 to the point. So that's the only difference. Because the meanings itself are very very almost the same. Very very little difference.
Good.
Yeah. So. Okay, so what are you doing tomorrow?
Well, I don't have any plans, which is good. So it'll be
It's supposed to be really nice.
Yeah, I think I might really do a good meditation, a strong meditation.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I need to do.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I'll see how things go, and maybe I'll join at 11. It's 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock tomorrow.
Oh, it starts at 9. That's the meditation.
Right.
And then he'll finish around 10:30, and then at 11.
Right.
I think it's the last class now for the stages of meditation, because I think next week he's supposed to do Shantideva, the Bodhisattva.
37 ways of the Bodhisattva.
I believe so. Or what was that one that we did with Kempo Sonam when he was here?
Kempo Sanam.
Yeah, remember back in February, I think he did the deeds, the Bodhisattva, the deeds of the Bodhisattvas. It was a translation that he did. Remember?
Was he the one who was the translator for the Dalai Lama?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I don't remember specifically, but I'll take your word for it.
So I think he's trying to find a rim, I guess a direct translation between the Tibetan and English. So I think that's what he's looking into. So.
Did you? Well, I think we talked about it yesterday. I sent the sutra, the Samadhi Sutra.
Yes, I
Yeah,
read that.
I'm really into that.
Yeah, it's very motivational.
Yes.
Oh, hey, look what I got today.
Oh, terrific. Okay, great. Yeah, great.
Yeah, I got it today.
Okay, very good. Where'd you order it?
Oh, Amazon. I mean, everywhere else it was. I think you put a direct link up
Yeah.
when you put it up in the.
So what was it, like $50 something?
Yeah. I mean, they only had one left.
Really?
They had one left.
Wow.
So yeah.
I ought to get a commission. I bet I've sold 7 or 8 of them.
Probably at least. I mean, yeah. I mean, really.
Good. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into that book for everybody's sake. That's really going to be good.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean. Yeah. I mean, today's. I mean, I got in late tonight. With the teachings, but you do a really good job, Lance.
Well,
You
thank
do.
you.
You really do. I mean, you break it down to, to put where everybody can, understand it and comprehend it. That's the most important thing. I mean, because man, Buddhism, you can get so deep and intellectual with it, and to the point where no one understands a word you're saying. Like, but you break it down to layman's term and really break it down.
I'm trying to make it practical. It should be practical.
Sure.
It should be practical for everybody.
Yeah.
Especially in the West, we take so much for granted, the things that we're talking about here. And to be able to understand how important they are, it's, I think, so important, and it's worth doing every time, all the time.
Oh, I agree. It's probably the most practical philosophical study that you can possibly do. I mean, it's not for someone that's so intellectual that that only they can understand, but it's for everyday man, everyday woman, that they can put it to everyday life. I mean, look at the Four Noble Truths. It doesn't get any simpler than that. I mean, that is really the basics of it.
I appreciate you saying that and making the connection with that.
Well, yeah. But I thought the people online would appreciate what you told me, a while back about change.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it seems like I don't listen, but I do.
And you have a very good memory. You remember about Kempo Sonam and so on. I don't remember all those things. But if I sit and think about it, then I can. If I see something that's written about it or something, then I can bring it back. But, I mean, I just kind of let everything go. I used to say I've forgotten more than most people know.
But you know what? You benefited from it. You have. You really have. That's the important thing. Okay, man. Well, on that note.
Thank you very much. I'll
Okay.
look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Here, Lance. Good night.